Here we are. Welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of February 23rd, 2015. Let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a period of silent meditation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating name, address, and whether you're speaking in favor of or in opposition to the item. Please spell your name for us. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearing, the council will vote on the resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last meetings of the month, which this is, immediately prior to the adjournment, anyone may speak on an issue not on the agenda for that date nor plan for a future agenda. Before we start, let's welcome Troop 159, who's here this evening doing merit badge work, I'm sure. Go ahead and call the first item, if you would.
We would request those giving testimony to please clearly state your name and address and to sign in on the sign-in sheet laying on the podium. First will be our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 7.
Anybody who'd like to speak to these items? Staff questions? Next item, please.
We can vote on these items. Items 5 and 6 were introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Roy. Discussion, call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes?
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next is our public hearing liquor resolutions. Item 8 is the request of Tiger, Inc., doing business as Karma Nightclub, to close indefinitely under a hardship status due to their establishment burning down until a new location can be found. And I don't believe he was going to come tonight.
Good. Any questions about that? Staff questions? Next item, please.
I'll call items 9 and 10 together. They're the application of Asian Buffet for a Class I liquor license at 5130 North 27th Street, Suites 5, 6, and 7, and the related manager application. If you would please come
Come
forward.
right on up, sir.
Just come right up here to the podium. And would you raise your right hand?
Okay.
Swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be.
Yes.
Thank you. Just state your name and address.
Sang Hui Dong. Address 5130 North 27th Street, Suite number 567, Lincoln, Nebraska 68521.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you spell that for us?
Sang, SHENG, HUIDONG.
Very good.
Thank you.
Any questions? Do you want to tell us about your business?
It's an Asian buffet restaurant.
Okay. And it's been open for a while?
No, it's still on remodeling right now. It's not open yet.
Okay, brand new. Okay. Very well. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? You're good. You can go sit down if you
Thank
like.
you.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call item 11, manager application of Jerry Conkle for Ruby Tuesday at 2700 North Hill Road. Just raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes.
Thank you. Just state your name and address.
Jerry Conkle, 2210 Veverina Lane, Lincoln, Nebraska 68512.
Anybody who would like to speak to this item? Questions for Mr. Conkle? Conkle, sorry. Good. Thank you. You can have a seat. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item from the audience? Staff questions? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call items 12 and 13. They're the application of Holiday Inn for a Class CK liquor license at 131 North 9th Street and the related manager application of Troy Terwilliger. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Hulka, M-I-H-U-L-K-A of Woods and Aiken, 301 South 13th Street, Suite 500, Lincoln, 68508. I represent the applicant for this new liquor license. The proposed manager, Mr. Troy Terwilliger, is sitting here in the second row. We're available to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Terwilliger was the manager at the Holiday Inn and will still be, is that correct?
That's correct. In
Okay.
fact, Mr. Terwilliger has been with this location for
Right.
in excess of a decade.
Right. Okay, I think we're pretty familiar with, John?
You want to share what the change here is with the Holiday Inn and the news for Lincoln?
It's actually pretty exciting. You may have read about it in the Journal Star. This investment group looks for opportunities in cities with major colleges, looks for hotels who are well-positioned near the college campus so that their guests can walk to the campus. And they're going to invest many millions of dollars to convert this and update this hotel, ultimately calling it the Graduate Hotel. It'll focus on students, parents, visitors on game days or just making college visits. They've done this in many states already. Madison, Wisconsin, for one, if you've been to a game there. Tempe, Arizona, and some other locations.
Okay, terrific. Welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
Next would be item 14, application of Mahoney Golf Course for a Class IB liquor license at 7900 Adams Street. Hi, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be? Thank you. To state your name and address.
Jonathan Benson, B-E-N-S-O-N, 7900 Adams Street, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68507.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Benson?
Carl. Yes. Since you're applying for this application, you must have another job there. What else are you doing at Mahoney?
I am the new contracted head golf professional through the city of Lincoln. So I will be running the golf shop and golf operations for the city of Lincoln and the Parks and Rec.
Very good. Glad to hear that.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions, let me ask first. Okay. Seeing none?
Mr.
Next
Chair, I
item.
move
Okay.
approval of items 8 through 14.
Second.
Second by Trent. Discussion? Call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next would be our public hearing resolutions. I'll call item 15, accepting the report of new and pending claims against the city and approving disposition of claims set forth for the period of January 16th through the 31st, 2015.
Anybody who would like to come forward with a claim, now is your opportunity. Seeing none. Staff questions? Anybody who'd like to speak to a claim? Next item, please.
All right, next I'll call item 16. This is rescinding Resolution A-88189, adopted by the City Council on April 14th, 2014, for the use of public right-of-way on the northwest corner of South 6th Street and L Street for construction of a portion of a loading dock ramp.
Good afternoon, Buff Baker, Public Works Engineering Services. This was a request by Bison Industries to do a loading dock for a new piece of equipment that they were going to try to ship out. From what I understand from their architect, with the grade that was there, they needed to haul those out on lowboys, and that grade would not allow that lowboy trailer to get in out. So with that, Mr. Cusick is asking to rescind the original application for that use right away.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Beck? Okay. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
All right, next I'll call items 17 and 18 together. They are authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement between the city and the State of Nebraska Department of Roads to accept NDOR fiscal year 2015 construction program funding of $400,000 for the resurfacing of selected state highway links within the city, and authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement between the city and the State Department of Roads to accept NDOR fiscal year 2015 maintenance program funding of $2,330,000 for the maintenance resurfacing of selected state highway links within the city.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, Roger Feigert representing Public Works. This is really the formal paperwork from the state of Nebraska to go ahead and authorize the transfer of those dollars from FY 14-15 for the maintenance work that we've been doing the last 2.5 years with the additional money that came from the state. The reason there's two agreements, there's two different pots of money that come from the state, one from District 1 maintenance, the other from some leftover money from District 1. We did large parts of Cornhusker Highway, Sun Valley Boulevard, O Street, and actually, all we really have left to do out of that pot of money is the replacement of the intersection of 27th and O, which will happen sometime or as soon as spring gets here and we know we can go back to construction. So again, this just authorizes the state to go ahead and send us the rest of that maintenance money that they had said they'd give us a year and a half ago.
Very good. Questions? Okay, Roger, this is not unusual. This is something we do periodically because we're maintaining we do the work and then they refund the money to us.
The $400,000 each year from District 1 is pretty usual, and we do that. The 2.5 and the 2.3 million that we got is a bit unusual. The state had a significant savings in some of the construction contracts that they'd done over the last couple of years, and they made a push and shared that money with Lincoln and Omaha, North Platte, and a number of other entities. So that doesn't happen too often, but thankfully we had projects and we could use that money and fix some of the state highways here in town.
Very good. Questions? Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
Next would be our public hearing ordinance's second reading. I'll call items 19, 20, 21, and 22 together. They are authorizing the issuance of general obligation refunding bonds of the city in a principal amount of not to exceed $6.3 million to refund the city's outstanding general obligation storm sewer bonds, Series 2005, and related matters. Authorizing the issuance of sanitary sewer revenue refunding bonds of the city in a principal amount of not to exceed $13.5 million to refund the city's outstanding sanitary sewer revenue bonds, Series 2005, and related matters. Authorizing the issuance of solid waste management revenue bonds of the city in a principal amount of not to exceed $7,060,000 and related matters. Authorizing the city to enter into a lease purchase transaction with Union Bank and Trust in a principal amount of not to exceed $3,400,000 to purchase and install light poles and related equipment such as light fixtures, wiring, and other items necessary to complete the installation of new street lights in the city and related matters.
Steve Hupka, City Finance Department. With me today are Scott Keene from Emeritus Investment Corp. and Mike Rogers from Gilmore and Bell. It's pretty unusual that we bring 4 bond ordinances together at the same meeting, but the market conditions are such that it's very desirable for us to get into the market as soon as possible and get these issued. We have an aggressive timeline to get them done in March and April. And I think with that, I've got the 2 experts here. Scott can tell you about the expectations for the bond issues, and Mike can certainly cover any questions you might have regarding some pretty complex legal documents regarding these bond issues.
Thank you, Steve. Scott Keen, Emeritus Investment Corp. As Steve mentioned, and you can tell from the titles of the issues, we have 4 separate issues, 2 of which are refunding issues and 2 of which are new money issues. As in the past, the refunding issues will be sold through a negotiation process with Emeritus. The 2 new money issues will be sold through an auction process, as we've done it in the past. The certificates of participation issue for the street lights is structured much like all of the prior issues. We've been doing these COPS financings for 10 years now. The underwriters, the parameters that are within the ordinance are as follows. Underwriter's discount of not to exceed 1%, final maturity of no longer than 2025, so approximately 10 years, and a true interest cost not to exceed 3.5%. The second new money issue is for the landfill. Those parameters have, again, an underwriter's discount of not to exceed 1%, final maturity not later than 2036, so approximately a 21-year financing, and a true interest cost not to exceed 4%. The first refunding is for the sanitary sewer system, refunding the city's Series 2005 bonds. Those parameters include an underwriter's discount not to exceed 0.9%, a final maturity not later than 2030, a true interest cost not greater than 3.5%, and minimum present value savings of 4%. In today's environment, today's interest rates, we're projecting that the savings would be approximately 8.5% or $1.1 million, so well in excess of the target of 4% present value savings. The second refunding is for the general obligation storm sewer bonds of 2005. Those parameters are an underwriter's discount, again, of not greater than 0.9%, final maturity not longer than 2025, TIC not greater than 3.5%, and again, minimum level savings of 4%. In today's environment, we would project the present value savings at about 10% or $600,000. So between the 2 refundings, we're looking at something in the area of $1.7 million of present value savings. Both of the refundings have final maturities that match the original financings. We're not restructuring, we're not extending the maturities. We're simply refunding them for interest rate savings with approximately equal savings in each year. We plan to ship the documents off to the rating agencies tomorrow. As Steve mentioned, we're moving fairly quickly to try to get into the marketplace. We plan to market the first 2 series in late March and early April. The other 2 series will have those documents shipped to the rating agencies in mid-March and have those going to market mid to late April. So we're moving kind of as quickly as we can with the financing coming to market about every 2 to 3 weeks. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions or turn it over to Mike.
Mike, do you want to go before we ask questions, or do you want to wait? Okay.
Briefly, Mike Rogers with Gilmore and Bell Bond Counsel. The 2 revenue bond issues, the sanitary sewer and the landfill revenue bond issues, are both ordinances issued under original ordinances which pledge the revenues of each of those respective enterprises, and they are similar to the ordinances that the city has adopted in the past for those types of bond issues. The certificates of participation issue, the documentation for, and the lease purchase financing for the streetlights, the documentation for that is similar to the financings that the city has done in the past. And the general obligation refunding issue, again, is also similar to other general obligation bond issues done by the city. All of them delegate authority for finalizing terms on the parameters that Scott just mentioned and walked through. And that's the general outline of the various documents, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, I want to thank you both for being partners with the city and helping us identify some of the savings on these refunding bonds. And just in case anyone out there is wondering why we aren't doing more of this, can you confirm for me that one of the reasons we can go forward with these refunding issues is that because they were originally issued in 2005 and there's a 10-year period before we can actually go forward with these kind of refinancing initiatives. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. The majority of the bonds issued by the city have 10-year call provisions. So the city has given to the bondholders protection for a 10-year period from having the bonds refunded away from them for interest rate savings like what we're doing now. So they become much better candidates. While we legally can do it in advance of the call date, the financing and the savings are greater if we're doing it very close to the call date, which is what we're doing with these financings. So we're in essence maximizing the savings by tying it to the 10-year call date.
Thank you.
And we'll have more, if interest rates stay where they are, we'll continue to bring issues that, we examine issues out generally 2 or 3 years. So we're already looking at issues that'll become callable in 2016, 17, and 18 as well. And we'll continue to report back on those.
Scott, if I'm sitting at home, tell me what you just, in layman's terms, tell me, I mean, because their eyes are rolling back and, and so are mine, but explain why this is a good thing and what we're accomplishing.
Absolutely. It really is nearly identical to what we've all done with our home mortgages. We take out a mortgage when we buy our house, and after a number of years, interest rates drop, and we have the opportunity to refinance that existing loan with a new loan at lower interest rates. We're doing the same thing. Typically, mortgage holders are able to refinance their loan the day after they take it out if they choose to, but city has to wait a certain period of time, and other municipal bondholders or issuers have to wait a certain period of time before they have the ability to refinance that debt, and this is what we're doing. Structuring it so that just like a mortgage at lower interest rates, there are some issuance costs to doing the transaction, but the drop in interest rates more than make up for those costs and provide annual savings.
So if I'm sitting at home and I'm looking at all those numbers, I'm assured that the city is not taking on more debt here, and if you just look at the numbers, they can be a little scary. So
that's correct. The rating agencies really are very obviously look at this very favorably because it puts the city in a better position to handle its outstanding indebtedness because we're lowering the interest rates and ultimately shortening to some extent the financings.
Thank you. Roy.
That's what I want to make sure people understand is that we're not extending the length of these bonds. We're keeping the end date the same.
That's correct.
And that's how we can realize savings.
That's correct.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Additional staff questions? Next item, please.
Next would be item 23, creating Sidewalk Improvement District 1189 for the purpose of constructing the sidewalks generally located at 6844 Lawrence Circle and assessing the cost thereof against the benefited property. I would note for council that we have received a request to continue the public hearing for 1 week on this item.
So move.
Second.
Okay, and then we'll get back to you just one second, Roger. This was a request from the attorney for the gentleman involved and his mother. Because last Monday was a holiday, they got notice a little late, and they would like to have another week to look at that, and it seemed prudent, so we've asked them. We said we'd go ahead, and I talked to Public Works, and they're okay. This does not cause us a problem.
Just a clarification, so if we're continuing public hearing, will next week be a continuation of second reading, or will it go to third reading?
Our intent
We'll go to
is
third, so it will
third
be
reading.
public hearing with action next week.
That's correct.
Okay,
That is correct. Go ahead, Roger.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Roger Feigert, Public Works, and for those people that might be expecting the public hearing, just a brief overview. I did prepare a set of fast facts that were in your council agenda. I have a map here. Hopefully they'll pull that up. This property really was part of a larger parcel of property that was subdivided and developed in the early 2000s. This is 6822 Lawrence Circle. And as part of that plat condition, all the streets in that subdivision were to have sidewalks on both sides. For people listening, most often then sidewalks are constructed with new homes with the building permit. They're part of occupancy. Because this home already existed and was part of the plat, there was no building permit for the home, and the construction of that sidewalk did not take place. And as time has gone by, the rest of the subdivision is done. There was a request from the Homeowners Association to finish the sidewalks in the area. Clefcorn School is right up here to the north end. And to make a long story short, at that point, the mayor, using the mechanisms within the city's control, either through executive order or by ordinance of council, to order sidewalks in where there's a gap that needs to be done. The mayor did order those sidewalks in. The property owner was given until towards the end of July last year to construct those sidewalks. We tried to do that. They chose not to do that. And then the option before the city at this point would be to have the council create an assessment district in which the city would move ahead, construct the sidewalk, and then assess the cost to that. I would like to indicate that the property owner, or Mrs. Reiling's representative, her son Tony, called me again this afternoon, indicating that he believes that maybe in the long run it might be more economical for them to go ahead and build a sidewalk rather than have the assessment district do that. The estimates in the assessment district are significantly higher than what I would expect a property owner could go out and hire somebody and do it. There's a lot of process in there. So I would like to support them in doing that, just as we have no problem in continuing this public hearing. I think Public Works still thinks the sidewalk district should be created, but I would be more than happy and have Public Works work with the property owner, and if they show good faith to construct the sidewalk in the spring, we'd hold off doing anything to add to those expenses and give them a chance to do that. But that's kind of where we are at this point, and
we'll discuss it again next week. Roger, can you point where the sidewalk would go, just so?
Sidewalk would go from just south of the driveway in
Right.
6822
Right.
over to the north lot line. The
Correct.
entire lot, the frontage on that street,
Correct.
the sidewalk is currently missing.
Okay,
Any questions?
thank you. Questions?
Come forward. Please come forward.
Should we, I'm here on behalf of the homeowners.
Yeah, come on up. Come on up. We're gonna get to that, but come right on up. Come. No, come on. We are going to continue hearing next week, but since you were here and we didn't know that, you're welcome to make your case today, okay?
Hello, my name is Mike Lester. I'm a member of the board of the Vintage Heights Homeowners Association. Address of the association is 7400 Lambert Place, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68526. And as Mr. Fagard said, he pretty much kind of laid out the where and the what's and everything. I just wanted to talk briefly about the Homeowners Association's position in support of constructing this particular sidewalk. This issue came up in about 2011, 2012, right as the Clefcorn Elementary School, which was referenced, was constructed, which is right down the street from this particular residential street. So starting right about as that school construction was complete is when our association started to get concerns and complaints into our homeowners association about the safety of their kids because some of them walked to school, some with older brothers and sisters, and so there's just the concern of safety. In the summer, yes, they could walk on the grass, but in the winter, because of the plowing and the snow, they'd be in the street. And so back in 2011, 2012 is kind of back when the board first approached the homeowner and asked if they could possibly install a sidewalk. It wasn't well received. And so after quite a bit, and that was before I was on the board, but essentially it was refused to be installed. And so we reached out to the Lincoln Department of Sidewalks, a gentleman by the name of Barney Bloom, back in 2012, and we kind of began the process of determining, is a sidewalk required to be here? Should it have been there? Is it required by city ordinance? An area that we just weren't familiar with. And through that and through discussions with Mr. Fagard, we understand that a sidewalk should have been installed, but again, because the house was there, the builder who bought all the land apparently there's an oversight with that sidewalk. So as Mr. Fagard indicated, the mayor did sign an order back in the fall of 2013 asking for it to be installed. We informed the residents in that area that that was the process and that it would be installed within 45 days. And we understand that there was an extension onto that request of 45 days, and now we're a year and a half since that date. So on behalf of the association, a little bit of frustration that it's being continued, again, for something that's as important as the safety of the kids that are walking down the street. So that's the homeowners association on behalf of our residents. That's our main position is, again, safety. And so we are in support of that particular sidewalk.
Questions? Carl?
Yeah, that wasn't quite sure about your frustration, but The action that, we haven't actually voted on it, by the way, the amendment is to continue hearing for next week and action next week, so there's no delay on when the action would be. Just, okay.
So should we come back next week?
You're
No,
certainly
we're
not
good.
obligated to. You've made your comments are now part of the public record. so.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Let me ask you one question. You heard Mr. Feigard say that he might recommend that we go forward and put it in, but give the gentleman an opportunity to put it in himself. If there was a cutoff date that said it would be, that the sidewalk would have to be in one way or another by the time school started next fall, is that something reasonable to you all?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody would like to speak to this item? Additional staff questions? Let's take a vote.
All right, Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. That concludes our public hearing. We can move into the voting session. All right. Public hearing resolutions. Item 15 is the report of claims against the city for the period of January 16th through the 31st, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Larian. Discussion, call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 16 is rescinding Resolution A-88189 for the use of public right-of-way on the northwest corner of South 6th and L Street, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Roy. Discussion, call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook? Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next is item 17, the agreement between the city and NDOR for $400,000, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Roy. Discussion, call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 18 is the agreement between the city and NDOR for $2,330,000, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Roy. Discussion, call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Public hearing ordinances second reading are items 19 through 23. Ordinances third reading, item 24, comp plan conformance 14027, declaring approximately 2,690 square feet of property generally located at North 12th and Charleston as surplus, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Trent. Discussion, call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 25 is the license agreement between the city and OPPD for the installation of a fiber optic line on city-owned property in Ashland, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Trent. Discussion, call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook? Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next is item 26, change of zone 14035, application of Darlene Harrison for a change of zone from R2 residential to R3 residential on property generally located at the northwest corner of South 40th and Pioneers Boulevard, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Trent. Discussion, Larian.
Just wanted to say that among the many ways that we grow our community, we have the important goal of supporting infill development that is well-designed and appropriately placed, and this seems like a fantastic example of that. I wanted to just mention that this is a great example of how we maximize the city's current infrastructure, which is good for taxpayers, and recognize that the department made some effort at being flexible, changing some of the requirements so the developer could make this site work. And the developer worked closely with the neighbors to try and minimize the impact, especially to the neighbors to the north. So I really appreciate their efforts and appreciate the foresight of trying to plan for a turn lane from 40th onto Pioneers as well.
Any other comments? Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook? Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Resolutions first reading are items 27 through 33, and ordinances first reading are items 34 through 39. Our pending list is item 40. Anyone wishing to address the council on a matter not on this agenda and not planned to appear on a future agenda may do so at this time, since it is an open microphone session.
Invite you to a paradise on earth. There are some corrections. Put a cross on your waistband of your undies and you won't have adverse touch. Chuck Hagel started American Voting Machine Systems Company. Chuck was elected as a Republican, but every opinion he had was a Democrat. Chuck Hagel was advertising that his machines were hackable. He was excused from being the head of the Department of Defense. Electronic voting machines were hacked into in 2008 and 2012. Voted new civic leaders are gays that do treason or are not Americans. The Chinese put Americhrist that headed pharmaceutical and other companies in prison in China, according to Forbes magazine, October 24, 2014. Do not have any pills. Obama had our pills being made abroad and also in China. 55 American prisoners were tortured all day in a Chinese coliseum while 7,000 Chinese communists watched. If you want pot legal as a civic leader, do you want to make people dumber? Do you want to make the rate of AIDS quadruple? Do you want women to have out-of-wedlock babies? Do you want to make a third of the children have dyslexia? Do you want to have 53 million abortions, causing the next generation to have half the population? Do you want there to be more home crimes in 10 years, to have a lot of incest, adultery, and molestations? If you've answered yes, you are a foreigner or a druggie. 23 Americans were taken hostage in December 1978 by Ahmadinejad and other Iranian terrorists. It was in news for 444 days until Reagan got them out. 23 Americans were taken in prison in January 2011 in Cairo by Cairo terrorist government officials. Where is the sympathy to put them in the news every day? News is run by foreigners. Those Americans were crucified in the Sinai Desert. ISIS terrorists kidnapped thousands of Eurochrist and Americhrist women last fall. Near Christmas, some were given over to Jews in Jerusalem, all pregnant. Where was it in our news? What missionaries abroad are in jail? Are there Border Patrol and Peace Corps in jail? All Russians 18 to 28 years old were drafted by gay, bi, incest rapist Putin to serve in a plainclothes army to go to Holland for a while, and then the Russian women became teachers and molested children, so they got worse grades. Russian men became rapists in the neighborhood and held civic offices in Americhrist and a Eurochrist. Columbia University is missing 36,000 students. There is no missing persons bureau active in the United States. Russians came to 56th Street Port and did away with 10,000 students in dorms. Then the Chinese students came by the same 56th Street Port and did so also. Then the Russian students did again. Then the Chinese students did it again between May and this January. Wear a cross or a rosary, Christ is here judging all people. Only the kind shall remain.
Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to speak this evening?
Mr. Chair, seeing no one coming forward, I'd move for adjournment.
Second.
Seconded by Trent. Discussion. Call a roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook? Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
7-0.